Hello, I'm Seth, Topless, editor-in-chief of Forbidden Origins Comics, and I'm in the heart of New York's financial district. Right behind me is the New York Stock Exchange, and I'm here to talk about the Switch 2 prices. Earlier this April, Nintendo put out a Nintendo Direct detailing the Nintendo Switch 2, exactly all the specifics, the technical specifics, and its release date. It was one of the best Nintendo Directs we've had in a while, probably the best video game presentation we've had for years, until the very end when they didn't announce the price. And if you've been around long enough, if you've been following the news long enough, you know that that means that they plan to make you spend a lot of dollars for it. So they put out the prices online, $450 and $500 with the Mario Kart bundle. Personally, I think that makes a lot of sense for a new console. Not as powerful as a PS5 or the Series X, but it costs about as much. At the same time, neither of those consoles really can do 4K at 60 frames per second on TV, and they're not portable. So I do understand where they got those prices, especially since those consoles came out years ago. Now, Nintendo is known for not really selling their consoles at a loss. Their model is so that as long as one game is bought with a Nintendo Switch, it's immediately profitable. That's how they've done with all of their consoles. And while it is more expensive and it is controversial, it's definitely less controversial than what is their gaming price. The major controversy is the price of the games itself. Mario Kart World is going to be $80 at launch. Tears of the Kingdom, the Switch 2 edition, will also be $80. In fact, a lot of the $70 games on Switch are going to be $80 on the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, a lot of people are saying that the game development costs are much higher than they used to be. Inflation is the reason all this blah, 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 blah. I don't quite agree. This is just corporate greed, plain and simple. Now, I will give it to them that Nintendo does treat their employees better than most other gaming companies, Ubisoft, Rockstar, just to name a few. At the same time, there's no guarantee that the higher prices will be going directly to the employees. I don't think that's true. It's meant for the corporation. Now, the rise of Nintendo games to $80 is a scary prospect because we've recently standardized video games to $70. That was very recent, too. That was the PS5 generation, basically. And within 5 years, it's jumping to $80, whereas before, it was $60 for like 10. Now, people are harkening back to the old Nintendo days, back in the 90s when Nintendo was basically the only game in town before the PlayStation arrived. Prices there weren't really standardized. Nintendo was charging games based on how much they think you should pay for them. That's why a lot of Nintendo 64 games range from $40 to $100 on release. And then the PlayStation came around with their disc-based gaming, they could charge less, and it forced Nintendo to put their prices down. And then eventually we got a standardized price of about $50 for a new game. That became $60, that became $70, and now they're jumping to $80 real quick. And just as with the $70 price point, all it took was one game to hit that, and then every other game decided, okay, next year, we're all $70. And that's probably going to happen with the Nintendo Switch 2. Maybe some of the games will be $70. Donkey Kong will launch at $70. Mario Kart 8 is launching at $80. If every other company sees that Mario Kart World sells well, or they see that the Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 edition launches at $80 and does well, guess what? The next Call of Duty is going to be $80. The next God of War is going to be $80. The next Ghost of Tsushima is going to be $80. There's already talk of GTA 6 becoming $100 on launch. You know how fucking crazy that is? GTA 6 at $100. And they know they can probably sell that because Grand Theft Auto 5 was the highest selling video game ever made. Another aspect people tend to be forgetting is that Nintendo games never go down in price. They are stagnant as hell. This is Breath of the Wild, not Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild. This game released almost a decade ago. This is $60 brand new. That is the same price it was released at, $60. What do we expect with Mario Kart World? It's always going to be $80. Hell, they're releasing Wii U games on the Switch for the brand new $60 price point. What do you think is going to happen with Mario Kart World? In fact, the Switch 2 upgrades are going to run an extra $10, so it'll go from $70 to $80. Breath of the Wild on the Switch 2 will be a $70 game. They've already released a price. Tears of the Kingdom 2 will be an $80 game. Kirby is going to be an $80 game. You see a pattern, right? Now, to be fair, you are basically you purchasing the game and then an upgrade on top of it. So you can make a lot of excuses for that. But then you have Mario Kart World, which launches at $80. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, you can just buy the bundle and that'll knock off $30 off the price. But here's the thing, the bundles are temporary. They are not always going to have Mario Kart World in it. And also, you do have to reckon with stock, right? We saw this with the recent Nintendo Switch 2 pre-orders. There was a $500 version with Mario Kart World, and then there's a $450 version with just the Switch 2. The $500 version sold out much quicker, so the people that pre-ordered the $450 version have to buy the $80 Mario Kart World edition if they want to play Mario Kart World. Now, all of this is a drop in the bucket compared to the American dollar. As we've seen recently, it is crumbling. American wages have stagnated for the past 30 to 40 years. Things are a lot harder to buy now. Your rent is now 50, 75% of your burden. It used to be 30%. Now, since you have to spend most of your money on rent, you now have to choose between groceries, bills, or playing the fun stuff, So like getting a Nintendo Switch, you do have to save months at a time to buy a Nintendo Switch. Now, a lot of people be like, well, it's a luxury, you don't really need it, which is fair. But also, in terms of Nintendo, how do you think you're going to sell well? Like, you're jacking up the prices when President Trump recently got elected. Anybody that's been paying attention to the economy, to politics, has seen the fucking roller coaster stock exchange has been going through, and the American dollar. Now, Nintendo insiders were already talking about how the prices of Nintendo games and the console itself are already factoring in the tariff costs. That's why Nintendo ended up changing their manufacturing from China. That's where they used to manufacture their consoles. They're not quite doing that anymore. But then they were blindsided by the Trump tariffs. Now, because of the tariffs, America is expected to go through another Great Depression. Probably hit around the time the Switch 2 drops, maybe even slightly before. So the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to suffer, but more than that, we're all going to suffer. To be honest, it is kind of goofy that I'm even making this video in front of the New York Stock Exchange, because there's a lot more pressing issues than the prices of the Switch. But it's just a symptom of a much larger problem, which is like corporate greed, capitalism, Western imperialist empires collapsing under the unbearable weight of fascism. So the people making excuses for Nintendo Switch 2 prices and the people making excuses for Donald Trump, definitely not the same people. They're not always the same people. I don't think there's a huge overlap between them, but if you're making excuses for corporate greed, for price gouging, for Western imperialism, for fascism, for the American empire at all, like a defense for wanting to go back to how things were, wanting to the top of the world again, you should be angry. You should be wanting those things. You should be mad. You should be mad at everybody that works in that building. You should be mad at Nintendo. You should be mad at Donald Trump. You should be mad at capitalism. You should be mad at corporate greed. All of that. Because it's coming for our lives. We're not going to be able to afford the luxuries. Hell, we're not going to be able to afford food soon. Anyway, I'm Seth, Topless Editor-in-Chief of Forbidden Origins Comics, and that's it. Join our Discord, subscribe to our YouTube. Bye.